Allison, you're just going to have to come off mute again because the recording started.
Okay, did that work? Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think in the interest of time, it might be best to just go through everything. And then if we do have time at the end, we can take some questions. We do have another session, so maybe we can get to it, get to some questions that we might not get to afterwards. And I think, we can always take some questions offline and outside of the process. So, Megan, do you mind putting that in like present mode where the notes aren't?
Yeah, sorry, let me redo that. Share it from Teams.
Are you sharing it with me? You're going to put it on the screen and you're going to, okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
So let me
click
present to Teams here.
While Megan's doing that, I'll just give a little update. So the current contract that we're in comes to an end the end of this month. So it expires on June 30th. The new contract starts on July 1st, and it goes through the 30th of June 2030. So it's for 4 years. It's 4 years long. So what we're going to do today is we're going to highlight the key changes in the contract. Some of them might not necessarily be applicable to certain departments. But, there were a lot of minor changes that are in the contract, but, we just want to highlight the bigger changes that are applicable to you. So we can go to the next slide, please. So as I stated, those are it's 4 years, the effective dates. It codifies best practices, hopefully that we're already following. The implementation will be ongoing. Like I said, any questions, please reach out. Sometimes things aren't necessarily clear, in the beginning, and we can provide clarification. So as everybody knows, graduate assistants have a dual role at the university. They are primarily here, and they can only be a graduate assistant if they are a graduate student, as everybody knows. So they have benefits, resources as employees, and as students, they have certain policies that they are required to follow as employees and as students. So, as everybody knows, they provide services to the university as teaching assistants, research assistants, or as both. We can go to the next slide. Just talked a little bit about that. TAs, RAs, TAs, and RAs. And the contract also says in its recognition clause that graduate students who are also employed, who have the same functional relationship to the university, substantially the same functional relationship to the university as a GA, are also GAs. So if you're out there hiring a graduate student, not as a GA, but they are functionally doing the same work that a TA or an RA does, they still fall under the contract. So you might not hire them, but they still fall under the contract and it could be grieved. And then you would have to pay them as a GA and they would have to get all those same benefits. So the graduate school in their catalog has a definition that assistantships are awarded to graduate student who provides teaching or research support to the university that is part of their academic program. And I think that is an important piece, is the work that they're doing should be related to their academic program. Okay.
The work that they're doing must be related to their academic program.
Yes. Yes. And if you have questions about that, it is best practices to reach out to the graduate school or to labor relations. And we do receive those questions, but don't hire them as a graduate assistant and then come back later and say, oh, maybe they shouldn't have been. It's much easier to fix things before appointments are issued. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks. So, now to that piece, these are positions that are not covered. This contract specifically excludes provost professional graduate interns, graduate students that are fellows. I know lots of departments want to treat fellowships just like GA positions and call them GAs and all that. We want you to keep those separate and apart from GAs. GAs are required to work a certain amount, an average of a certain number of hours a week. Fellows, it's support so that they can pursue their academics. So we should not be treating fellowships the same as GA ships and not calling them the same thing. So, and I'm bringing that up because we had a couple of situations where the union was like, they are GA ships, you should be treating them and you should be paying them and giving them all the same benefits. Training grants, they're not GAs. Yukon Health GAs do not fall under the contract. And then I added this in: work that is not related to their academic program should not be a GA ship. And then obviously student labor work. But the last bullet here is that summer GA work is covered under the contract. That's Article 34. Okay, next slide. So all I did here was just highlight the contract provisions that have major changes that we're going to be talking about today. Next slide. So there wasn't a lot of changes with Article 4, which is non-discrimination, bullying, and harassment. What I want to highlight today is that we've had conversations and we've seen it. Labor Relations has seen it, and I know the graduate school has seen it. Claims that there is bullying of our graduate assistants taking place. And what we're hearing, and I can understand this, is there have been some GAs coming forward to the union complaining about these situations, but they're worried about any repercussions. We do have a non-retaliation policy, but it's still, they don't want to come forward and they don't want to file a grievance, but they want this behavior to stop. So I think we have to work together to make sure that, bullying doesn't take place. A lot of the GAs, it's my understanding, that are going to the union are international GAs. And as we all know, they're under a lot of intense anxiety and pressure of what's been going on the last couple of years. So, and GAs are different from other employees at the university, right? Like many of them need their GA ships to be able to complete their academic program. So we want to try to make sure that, they continue to have employment so they can finish up their academic program. So I just want to get this message out, and I would appreciate it if everybody gets that message out and be mindful of it and see if we can stop it in early stages. Okay, Article 5 is appointment and reappointment notification. So, there is in Article 6 an appointment security, and that says that once we issue a GA offer letter, the university has to honor those terms. Okay, so that's why, we've last spring of 25, we saw some issues. I know there was a lot of funding issues. It was being retracted, and I think departments were really concerned about their GAs having, financial support. So what departments I was seeing they were doing is they were holding back and not necessarily following the June 1st deadline for fall appointments. And they were holding back the offers and trying to figure out who was getting what funding, whether it was TA or RA. So we worked, we talked about this at the table. And one of the things that we got was that if the department doesn't know at the time on June 1st, whether or not they're going to have funding for a student, whether it's TA or RA, because they don't, for instance, they don't know if the research funding is going to come through, you can just issue the offer letter just saying it's a GA ship. Okay. And then once more information comes after June 1st, then you can tell the grad, we're going to give you a TA ship, or we have funding came through, we're going to give you an RA ship. But if you know that they're going to be in a teaching position, then you have to tell them, and the same with an RA position. Because what we were hearing from the grads, the GA union, was they want to have something in their hand on June 1st so that they can re-up their lease, so that they can, show it and prove that they're making money in their personal lives. So I think it's really important that that we follow this if we can, but we do have a little leeway by just offering a GA instead of an RA or a TA. Another thing that was added is they really wanted to put something in the contract that required the university to provide priority to our existing GAs over our incoming GAs. You know, from what I hear, we already do that. And there's so many one-off situations why we would prioritize an incoming GA over, you know, over a returning GA. But we just put it in there that it's, you know, it's a priority. Also, you know, in the slate system, this is really going to be slate, right, Megan? I just want to confirm that. The third bullet, the second red bullet point at the end here is the graduate school is going to notify GAs if they don't have an offer letter in the system as of the June 1st deadline within the 5 business days of June 1st. So this is actually going to put the GA on notice that, hey, as of, you know, 5 days after June 1st, there's no offer letter in the system for you. So you should go and talk to your department, talk to your advisor, and kind of like figure it out what's going on. So another requirement is that the letters must include mandatory fee information. And what we are doing is we are working with the bursar's office, and we're going to provide a link in the offer letter, and it's going to take them to the bursar's website. That's going to be cleaned up a little bit to make it very clear what their mandatory student fees are. We can go to the next slide. All the deadlines for issuing offer letters are going to remain the same in the new contract, except for the summer intercession. And they should be made at least 21 days prior to the beginning of the work assignment. There is an exceptional circumstances, you know, an exception for exceptional circumstances, but I think we really need to try to get those offer letters to our GAs as soon as possible. And I already talked about the mandatory student fee information. Go to the next slide. All right, so supplemental description of duties. There was, you know, a lot of talk about that at the negotiating table. And in my experience, I don't think all departments are really following this, and I think they need to follow this. I've had conversations with departments, like it's not possible for us to give them their SDDs with all the information 30 days prior to the start of the semester, because departments just don't know all that, especially, you know, teaching assistant positions. So really what you should be doing is you should be issuing the SDD 30 days prior to the beginning of the semester. And then if you don't know the class time, or you don't know whatever it is, you know, leave it blank and then give them an amended one. Once you figure out what those other details are, you need to amend it. Another thing that I know some departments were not doing that was required in the current contract, and it will continue to be required, is you have to give GAs 24 hours to review these and then to kind of sink it in, and, you know, if they want to raise concerns, like don't give it to them and tell them sign it now and give it back to me during their orientation. You need to give them if they want to sign it and not review it, that's fine too. Another thing that we added is, you know, if you need your GA to be on campus when campus is closed, say during a big snowstorm, or, you know, if the electricity, the power goes out and classes are canceled, you know, maybe you need them to be there to feed the mice. You need to put that in their supplemental description of duties. There's going to be a box in the new template form, and you're going to need to check that box. So you're giving them the heads up that they may be required to be on campus when classes are canceled, and you have to, they should be reporting to work. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then they can be released and they can leave campus. Okay, next slide. Okay, workload. So there was information that was added in the workload, what is considered workload, and workload is considered required GA training. So if the department is requiring you to do, requiring GA training, that is part of their workload. Like, so if they're going off and they're attending this training on their own, that should be not considered part of their workload. There's nothing wrong with them going to their supervisor and saying, I'd like to attend this training. Is that okay? Is that part of my workload? And that's fine to have that conversation. So very, very important. Do not have them do not require them to do any work, training, orientation, anything before the start date of their appointment or after the start date of their appointment. We've run into a lot of issues when that's happened. So if there is a training that's happening before their appointment, you can say, hey, you might be interested in this. This is not part of your GA ship, but you could attend this if you want. Okay, so the next, so there's a workload review process. If a GA feels as though they're doing more work than they're supposed to be doing, so 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week, 10 hours a week, as we all know, it's an average amount of time. It can vary from week to week. But for international students, when classes are in session, they should never be working over 20 hours a week. But if a GA has a claim regarding their workload, this article, this should be followed. And I ask that you review this process. We don't have to get into the details right now, but they should be bringing their complaint as soon as possible, but no later than 6 weeks after they knew or should have known. We wanted to put that language in because we didn't want them waiting and then asking for them to be paid the difference between what they are paid and what they're claiming they should have been paid. But it's a process, and it's going to go to eventually, it could go to the dean of the graduate school, and then it could go to arbitration. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. And that's what so travel. Okay, so travel, really what they want is across the table, they want their travel to be reimbursed as soon as possible if they don't have a travel card. And I'm suspecting that departments need to do their approval process as soon as possible for them to actually get this done. So we did put language in there that they shall be reimbursed once everything goes into accounts payable. But what we're really asking is that the department, the supervisor, approve these so these people can be reimbursed. We also put there's a little bit more language in there. They may request a travel card or advances, but they can still use their personal card. But I think we should all be mindful that, they are students here too. They can't work full time at the university. They're not getting paid a lot, at the end of the day. So we should be taking steps to get their travel reimbursed as soon as possible. Okay, next slide, please. I don't know where there we go. So we can just, Megan, you can just have it all there. This is the same since it's in black, all that's the same. They get 3 days of paid leave under Article, 15, which is their leave of absence, which is akin to our medical leave. So that process is the same. The process is the same, whether it's paid or unpaid. What departments really need to do is if you suspect that somebody needs to take medical leave, whether they've outrightly said it or you suspect that they might, please refer them to, beyond the 3 days, like having the flu or something like that. Please refer them to human resources, the absence leave, team, because that needs to be done right away. And I'm seeing that departments are kind of feeling like, oh, I'll just give this person leeway and they don't show up, and just, that's not going to end well for anybody, including the GA. Please refer them, give them a contact information. The same for workplace accommodations. I don't know if everybody is aware, but now OICR is processing those. So just reminding everybody about that. Article 15, there was a change that it expands the definition of a family to include grandparents, sibling, aunt, and uncle. We can go to the next page. Okay, so the changes in the leave of absence provision, what the current contract says, if you're the birth parent, you get 6 or 8 weeks, depending upon the type of birth that it is. And the current contract says that it can't extend beyond the end of your appointment. And it was only during your appointment. So what we did in this contract, we negotiated that if you have a successive appointment, so you say you have an appointment that ends May 22nd, and then you have a summer appointment that starts May 23rd, you can use that 6 or 8 weeks in your, next appointment. Another thing is that for the birth parent, you can then also use a bonding leave, just like the non-birth parent. So it doesn't necessarily have to happen right after the birth, the 6 or 8 weeks, medical leave. So they're now getting an extra 21 days, but it's bonding and it's not a medical leave. And another change is that we added that the university shall consider good faith bereavement requests. So we just don't say, oh, it's not in the contract, you can't have one. I think they should review it and see if it's possible during the appointment. You can go to the next one. Really, the holidays, we just codified Juneteenth as a holiday. We were already doing that, but now it's one of the holidays listed in the contract. There was a lot of discussion about recognized cultural and religious holidays. We kind of beefed up the language a little bit more. It shouldn't be unreasonably denied, but just making it clear, it's not a paid holiday. And if, for instance, you're a teaching assistant and we need you in the classroom that day, then, and you have a legitimate reason to say, no, we need to teach this class, for example, then that you don't have to give them that time. But they are required to submit their request with as much advance notice as possible. And then part of that discussion would be how to make up the missed work, if they can. Go into the next slide. Health and safety. One of their concerns is that, what if our health and safety policy provides less protection in the future if it's amended? I think the concern is, a lot of, federal law has, been clawed back. So what we did is we put in language that, the health and safety policies incorporated into the agreement, provided there is no updates that rolls back any existing protection. So there's a process if that happens, which, from my understanding is unlikely. We put in language too that no GA is required to work in a hazardous work condition, but they should follow the policy and report it as required, and they should be doing their work otherwise. So we don't want a GA saying, oh, this is a hazardous work condition, I'm not going to work at all and leave. There should be work for them to do if they're outside of that hazardous work condition. Same thing, university must provide first aid equipment, training, and information that involves a hazardous duty environment. And then the final piece of this article is that if classes are canceled campus-wide, GAs are not required to report to that impacted campus unless it's in the STD. So I talked about that, in a previous slide. Go on to the next one. Parking and transit, I'm not sure we need to get into detail here, but there was an arbitration a couple years ago, and we clarified that a GA Area 2 permit allows them to park in Area 2, allows them to park in commuter, but not premium commuter lots. They have 107 GA designated spots in Lot N, and then there's a process if the lots have to be changed. And then there's a provision in there if any Area 2 or commuter lot is eliminated or reduced by a certain percentage, a process for them to discuss it with the university. They're also being charged the employee rate for garage permits. This happened throughout all the contracts, AUP, UP, and GAs, that if you have an accessible parking permit, regardless of your assigned lot, you can park in any accessible lot, surface lot, not in the garage. They increased from 1 to 2 GAs who are on the Transportation Advisory Committee, and then GAs, like all Area 2 parking permit holders, can park in the dairy bar parking spots when it is closed. On to the next one. Tuition and fees. There's language in there that specifically excludes any waiver of comprehensive program fees. So there's no more, if there's a concern about hiring a GA that's enrolled in a fee-based program, there's no concern about who's going to take the financial impact. They just don't get their program fees waived under the contract. Then they get an increased waiver from the GUF, the General University Fee. And then there is language in there that if in-state tuition and mandatory student fees are increased by greater than 4.75% in any academic year, they shall be notified, and then we would bargain over any impact. They can bargain over any impact. So, so that was added. And then these are their increases to their stipend. Go to the next one. Health insurance, there was an increase in their health insurance premium rates for all three categories. We can go to the next one. Oh, one thing you don't need to go back a slide, but one thing I would like to remind departments is that they can have their premium of repatriation insurance paid for by the university. And I know that some student visa holders are required to have repatriation insurance. And we want to encourage our GAs to get repatriation insurance. There have been unfortunate circumstances in the past where international student did not have it. And, the university actually, it created an uncomfortable situation. And we want to get that, that person back to their home country. So we really want to encourage it, that they get it. Childcare, they have an increase in their childcare fund. They get 2 bumps at the beginning and then 1 in 2028. Next slide. So really the only change in discipline and dismissal is the list of types of discipline. We just added letters of reprimand. It wasn't one of the listed types of discipline. So we just added that in there. And then the last bullet point there, I just want everyone to be aware that Human Resources now has organization and staff development team, and they are available to assist in all employment matters, but we should be utilizing them with our GAs. If you have an issue that you don't think is discipline, but you want some guidance on how to counsel the person, you can reach out to them. It has to come to labor relations if it's discipline. But if it's pre-discipline, they're available to help out with these pre-disciplinary situations. You go to the next one. So there was a lot of discussion in the grievance and arbitration provision about when they can appeal a grievance, how many days, and to arbitration. Some of these days have been changed from this current contract to the new contract. They are required under our contract to let labor relations know when they get a grievance. I would just say if a department gets a grievance, as soon as possible, just make sure that labor relations has been notified, because we have to be very mindful of following these deadlines and these dates. It's best that we have, hearings, and we need the time to gather all the information and create a record, so that if this goes to arbitration, we have all the information that we need. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, and then another change is instead of them paying the filing fee at arbitration, we are going to be splitting that. Move on to the next one. So when a GA signs their offer letter, they are attesting that they are giving consent for the universities to provide specific information to the union. One of the things that the union requested is that adding to that list is the GA's home mailing address, and then that GA's academic home department. So Megan Petza has updated the template offer letters to include that, acknowledgement by the GA. So that's some information that we're going to be giving to the union. Another item that they added is they're going to have a 20 hours of union time release for the summer, for their summer appointments. And they can use that for 1 position or 2. Really, unless you've had a grad in your program that has a union time release position, you probably don't really need to know about the process. But the summer appointments are different. And when we have them, I guide departments and kind of tell them what the process is. I give them all the information. But essentially what's happening is we create an appointment, or they already have a GA appointment. And instead of working for the department, they're going to be working for the union. And then the money to pay for them is going to be centrally transferred over to the department. Go on to the next one. Like I said in the beginning, the duration of the contract is for the next 4 years. We can move to the next one. Summer and intercession, the only thing that changed from this contract to our new one is that the summer rates are going to reflect the increase in the stipend rates. Move on. We can move on from this. Okay, so the international GA rights was beefed up a lot. I think the union was concerned about ICE coming to campus and everything that's been going on with the federal government. So we put language in there that the university commits to not providing personally identifiable information without the GA's consent. And there's a caveat, unless permitted by law, legal process, or regulations. Also providing guidance regarding possible contact of law enforcement, federal agents, or immigration officials seeking to enter non-public spaces. So I'm sure everybody saw it earlier this year, the university sent out guidance. So, and which might be updated from time to time. So the remainder of this provision is the concern that if you're an international student that's supposed to be starting a GA ship, or that whose GA ship has been interrupted because of their visa status, the union wants to be involved, and the union wants the university to do everything that they can to re-employ that person, or, put them back in their position as soon as they are able to work. So this last bullet, and then we go to the next one. These processes were put in there to kind of give that GA that support and the extra care so that they can get back into their position as soon as possible. And then, there's a provision in there that says that they can work remotely if they can't arrive, or we can review a request for them to work remotely. But it is, we, the university, retain sole discretion. Do not go and allow one of your GAs to work remotely without going through the graduate school. They have a process. And there's a lot of implications, as far as tax law, workers' compensation, just, all that. So don't just ad hoc allow people to work remotely, especially internationally. Leslie, did you want to say something about you? Okay.
And of course, a student from a comprehensively sanctioned country.
Export control.
Export control also applies. Cannot work at all.
Yeah.
Can't have access to Husky CT. Can't work whatsoever when they're abroad.
If you have one of your GAs that are in a situation where they can't work, there's language in the contract now, as a reminder that they can apply for the graduate school's emergency fellowship. So that is something that should be considered. I mean, if you have a situation where one of your GAs is in one of these situations, reach out to the graduate school and labor relations as soon as possible, because it's really us that need to engage with the union and to give this GA guidance and support. So they can also take an extended unpaid leave under Article 15. We are already kind of doing that anyway. And what else? So that's kind of the summation of Article 35 international GA rights. Go on to the next one. Academic freedom is a new provision in the contract. It acknowledges how important academic freedom is. It adds that they have academic freedom in their appointment under the supervision of their supervisor. And they can express, this is similar to what's in, the faculty contract. It's not subject to the grievance process and arbitration process, but we can't use it to discipline them. So anyway, on to the next one. So another new policy is artificial intelligence. The university is in the process right now. Actually, they might already be figuring this out. The Artificial Intelligence Council, and the union is going to have a designated member to this committee council. Is that the last one? Okay, so I left a few minutes for questions. So
And there are a couple in the chat here.
okay, GA will appear. Oh, this is Megan said that. Let's see. Can language encouraging repatriation insurance be included in the offer letter?